Right now, President Trump is seizing this time when Congress is out and many people tune out of politics to try to seize powers at the limits of presidential authority. Trump continuing to deploy federal troops in the streets, changing the look and feel of what was very recently a more peaceful, normal Washington, now with these militarized scenes. And Trump is claiming he can unilaterally fire a member of the Independent Federal Reserve, Lisa Cook, seen there with the Chairman Powell. And he's trying to tip the majority of what has always been this legally independent central banking board. This builds on the president's longer efforts to use partisan pressure against the board's leader, Powell, to try to take economic actions that would boost Trump's administration. There's more to it than that, more details, but that's the bottom line. And the Fed, of course, is crucial to the nation's economy, to trying to prevent or manage risk and even financial crashes. And while the Fed's record's not perfect on all of that, basically no one in finance thinks that it would be better or improved if it had more partisan interference, that's from either party, or a MAGA takeover, which is what Trump is trying to do here. No other president has tried to move like this. And many different presidents, of course, have dealt with monetary and economic policy. You're looking at two of them going in and out of our most recent severe financial crisis in the 2008 period, separate from sort of the pandemic adjustment. That was the big one. But neither of them ever tried anything like this. Fed governors cannot be legally fired over policy, even if you're mad and you think they missed the warning signs of something as big as the housing bubble. So Trump's social media post, which is new, where he claims he can fire Cook, is itself already legally dubious, as a breakdown report from the New York Times concluded. Trump's DOJ also investigating her for a mortgage application. This was from before she took this post. There's been no charges or official findings against her. Financial experts widely view that reference as a kind of a fake, a pretext for Trump's desire to consolidate power over the independent Fed.
She hasn't been charged. So until she's charged, I don't know why the president would go now, unless he's really confident she will be charged, and I don't think he knows that.
When you talk about American exceptionalism, one of the key components has been the independence of the Federal Reserve.
In this case, the president, I guess, is judge and jury?
Without her being charged, it's really difficult to fire her because you're just basically saying, yeah, listen, she may have committed fraud, I'm firing her.
History shows that politicians who mess with the independence of central banks are playing with fire.
Playing with fire, that's how all of this is being covered. If other presidents thought, of course, that they could just legally shape the Fed any time to help their administration or going into an election, they would have tried it. No other president in either party has ever gone this far. And we have looked over all of the developments for you, and it's clear Trump will have a fight on his hands. Cook says she'll keep working because Trump has no authority to remove her. She's taking him to court, which means we would expect it to be resolved there. Hard to see how courts could duck this direct clash within the federal government. The Fed also releasing a sober statement which says the Reserve will abide by any court decision and reaffirms its commitment to accountability and independence in the service of families, communities, and businesses. The wider push here is Trump's effort to gut career independence across the federal government. That was part of the hidden agenda in that Musk era, where the Musk-Trump purges were clearly about undercutting a lot of other sources of alternate power or even expertise in the federal government. Now, you might remember, we all lived through it. There was a lot of buzzwords like efficiency, but it was clear that masked the wider agenda, from ousting career prosecutors to labor statisticians to now Fed members. Now, the Supreme Court has largely allowed Trump to seize some of these powers. Apparently, the Republican-appointed justices think that it should be special rules for Trump to reward him for pushing farther and giving him powers they did not grant during Democratic administrations. But even this somewhat tilted, MAGA-friendly court has already noted that the Fed is different, more protected and independent. So unless somebody relents, tonight's news will tee up a court clash over this power grab. Now, you may say we've had a lot of these. Trump seems to get away with a lot. If he's not always directly winning, he is moving the ball while the courts wait and talk and think because he gets things done in the meantime, whether that is ousting people or arresting people or all the things we've all lived together in this first year of this second and more aggressive Trump administration, second term. And here's some wider context. Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman was laying out the stakes of why this is both autocratically similar to some of those other problems I mentioned, but also higher stakes, because he says Fed Chair Powell must hold the line. If he caves, the implications are profound and disastrous. The U.S. well on its way to becoming Turkey, where an authoritarian ruler imposed crackpot economics on the central bank, sending inflation soaring 80%. Now, we don't know exactly if we would end up in that exact economic condition, but it is well known that autocrats who seize control over their country's economies are usually a net loss. This has been studied throughout history. Today's autocratic threats in America clearly have a MAGA right-wing bent. That's just a fact. But the empirical point Krugman is making, and I want to linger on this with you for a minute tonight, the factual point is not partisan or ideological. You can be worried about this without any regard to your feelings for Donald Trump, positive, negative, or neutral, because history is full of autocrats seizing economic control the same way they wanted control of weapons or speech, only to find market crashes, shortages, even famine, which we saw in the autocratic left-wing Chinese Mao example. And this is taught both in political science classes and economics classes. If you read a history of the 20th century, it's a big part of the lead up to the Cold War. It has been well established a free market cannot thrive with artificial autocratic central control by one single unaccountable self-declared enlightened leader, be it Mao or Trump or anyone else, Mao being a left-wing example. That's the context for resistance from the Fed and Wall Street over Trump's longer effort here to either control, reshape, or oust members of the Fed. And the dangers to economic independence tonight aren't coming to you in a vacuum. Finance leaders often claim that Wall Street just reflects reality rather than shaping it. They think, and they tell us, they can be largely apolitical as long as they get what they want, which usually involves leaving them alone. Deregulation, lower taxes, etc. Well, some of them were wrong. Maybe those were talking points and they believed or knew things were more complex, nuanced. Or maybe they really believed it, and Trump had to show another group of elites what so many other people have understood, which is why his approval's underwater. This Fed clash is a classic example of how even privileged, powerful people cannot just sit out a full-blown autocratic threat. Bank CEOs may not fear being personally arrested by armed agents and National Guard members, and they have wealth and power to deter that kind of crackdown hitting them personally, although it is already hitting some of Trump's perceived opponents who also have some power, from Democratic lawmakers to his former aide John Bolton, a longtime conservative Republican, whose criticism of Trump led to the president and his FBI chief advocating for Bolton's prosecution. And then there it is on Friday, the FBI going in and out of his home and office. Again, I told you it's not always partisan. He's not just a Republican. He was a longtime conservative Republican, then a MAGA Republican in that senior post for Trump. But it's not enough if you are on the wrong side of him now. That's the thing about autocratic leaders. So he's facing a crackdown that raises huge questions for the FBI and DOJ. We have not seen public evidence to substantiate the search on your screen. We also, journalistically, will keep an open mind. If evidence comes to light that suggests this is a very valid case and not just a response to Trump's public calls to punish him, we'll report that as well. But clearly, big questions here, and it's not in a vacuum. Again, the theme tonight, the theme based on reality, Trump is talking up a federal probe of another Republican critic, Chris Christie, who used to also be a federal prosecutor. He's pushing smears and legal attacks on other Democrats, including this sort of thin, paperwork-driven claim about mortgage fraud being raised against more than one perceived opponent. But the bankers and other elites are also seeing how fast an abuse of power can at least upend their work financially, smashing the Fed's independence in a way we haven't seen since its founding over a century ago. That's within this first year. Is it just going to slow down, cool off? I don't know. Have you been paying attention? Does Wall Street understand this man who they have helped give so much power to? Because Trump is demanding power over private companies' hiring and recruitment policies, whether they use DEI or not, something that in our free market companies should decide for themselves. And now, again, you might have missed some of this with all the news going on and living your summer life, but The Trump administration wants to buy up private companies so this administration can exert more control. So for executives who thought the pressure would be put on others, they are quickly learning more hard lessons. This administration taking, for example, a whole 10th stake in the giant chipmaker Intel.
Can you explain the rationale behind taking this 10% stake?
They worked out a deal where Intel is going to get the CHIPS money, but in exchange, we're going to get some equity.
So we should expect the U.S. government to be taking more equity stakes in businesses around the country.
It's possible. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Why shouldn't the U.S. government say, you know what, we use Palantir services, we would like a piece of Palantir. We use Boeing services, we would like a piece of Boeing. I guess the question is, where's the line?
Oh, there's a monstrous discussion about defense. I mean, Lockheed Martin makes 97% of their revenue from the U.S. government. They are basically an arm of the U.S. government.
With the troops in the streets and the imagery in Washington and giant banners draped over public buildings with more and more of your leader's face, when it's not even eyeing a next campaign because Trump is legally barred from any more presidential campaigns. And yet, as in so many other situations, he seems to give away where his mind is going, musing twice in 2 days about a dictatorship.
And they say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator.
And yet, if you look at these examples from the economy to the crackdowns to the arrests, who is feeling safer?